Now what we're going to do now is this very attractive kitten, and I'm just going to start the ball rolling by using the white pencil. Now you work from light to dark with the pastel pencil, and the first thing we do is to put the light tones in, and you'll see that we'll be adding quite a lot of colour to this, but we saw that that's going to be very dark at the background. Okay, so what we want to do here is to make sure we get plenty of light just established to start with. Now over here we've got white as well on the back. It's quite a lot of white, especially in the ears where we're having the hair and the fur. Now we get down to there. Oops, I'm just going to take a little bit off. And pastel pencils rub out, as you can see there, very, very well. So that's fine. Now I'm going to put all the white in that I can see on the top of the head. We'll just deal with the top of the head first because it really is a lot easier to do it that way. And we don't want to do the whole thing because you tend to smudge it if you put your hands on it. I've actually got a piece of paper here, you see. What I do is a bit of cartridge paper. It protects the lower part of the picture. Good idea when you're doing pastel work. Now it's going to be white round here. At the moment we don't have to be terribly fussy about how we're applying it, although later on, as you'll see, I'm going to be telling you to work in the direction that we see the fur lying in. That creates really a really nice realistic effect by using the pencils. Okay, that's good. That's fine. That's the white. Now, just the other area of white part. Oh, there's a little bit down here we need to do if we're going to start. But we're not going to go below the eyes, so we'll just stay there at the moment. And we've got the white on this side. That's great. What we want to do is to put some light around here, and the reason I do this is around the eye because we have stopping points. We can then, the other colours we're going to be putting in can come butt up to this. So we put the white in here. You'll have a reference picture to look at of this cat anyway, so if you're going to have a crack at it, you can use a reference picture as your guide. Now just round, just make sure we get this right. Just round here, there's also white. Although I said we wouldn't go down to the eye, I thought we might as well frame the eye. There we are. So now we know where we're going. So this is where we're going down to. Now there's a couple of other areas that we've got to worry about that in the marking of puss, and those are these. And then, although I said these were the only white, there is more just filtering through, so we might as well do all that while we get a chance. Now just there and just here, it's kind of halfway between the white and another colour which I'm going to show you in a minute. And that goes up there. Now that's pretty straightforward. That's all the white. Now the other colour I'm going to show you using is ivory. Now ivory can be put in everywhere we have the lighter areas. Okay. Now you see that I'm missing out. I've missed out that bit. I've missed out that bit because that is going to be dark. Now all those in between areas here, and say you have to identify this on your line drawing, is all ivory. So far straightforward, isn't it? There we are. And ivory all the way over here. Now we can really now, but just here, just filter it in. As I said, we'd have the combination of the white and the ivory at that point there. And it links up to there and comes down to there. So there we are now. We have ivory. Now, just on the top here, we've got other colours as well to worry about, but we'll come back to them in a little while. Okay. Now, on the ear, what I want to do on the ear is put in another colour. This is a brown ochre, we call it, which is like an ochre, but it's a little darker than the ochre. I'm also going to put ochre in as well, but we want to establish here some strength. So we establish strength there, and in this area, this is where we didn't put any ivory. Now the reason we didn't put ivory is because we're going to use a very dark colour in a minute on this area, and I'll explain this a little better when we use the dark colour, but for the moment you can quite safely put this in. Now, because it's going onto raw paper, in other words, there's no what we call base colour under here, it's going to register much stronger, as it would do around here, if I do it around here. Now, if I'd have put a base colour under that, white or the ivory underneath, it would have been weakened it, and then we would have lost just a little bit on the outside of that here, like that. And that just gives us a framework like that. And there's a little bit more coming around here. I don't want it here because the ear is turning this way, so we're getting more of a light actually showing, but we want just a little bit of light on the outside of that. Now let's just complete these dark areas. And a couple more. Now that's pretty straightforward, isn't it? Okay. Now what I want to do now is we're going to go back with a solid white. Now, going back over these areas that I've just done before, because now we've got other colours that we can butt into. Right there. I've left an area there, you see, and an area there. And you'll see why I've done that in a little while. It's solid again. I want to make this solid because we'll be putting some greys in here. Come back to the ivory, right? And there we want that solid. When I say solid, that is going to be left virtually white on its own. Well, just here, I just want to bring a little bit of white back in there, like that. Not there, because this is where we have the ivory. And it's always a good idea just to go back in and say, okay, I understand that now. So that's where the ivory is going to go, and it all links up together. So it all marries nicely together. Excellent. Now, in this area where I was telling you here that we have left, I'm just going to use a little bit of white, not a lot. Just a little, just to put a bit of tone in. Now into that, I'm also going to put a pink. Now this is the first time we've used this. This is a light pink. It's number 132 in our colour range. And that will go all the way down here into there. And it can also just filter into the edge of the white, so we don't get just a hard edge. Same thing here, put the pink in and kind of, now if you're clever, if you feel like being clever, drag the pink into the white, like that. So we get a graduation. You don't have to do this, but it's fun. Okay, that's great. Now there's a couple of other colours. I'm going to use a grey now. And this is a 273 grey. And this will darken down the pink in the ear, because it's a little bit bright at the moment, and we need to darken that down. And we do the same on the other side. Excellent. Now the other thing I want to do is I want to use the light. This is a 183 ochre. This is a lighter ochre, and what we want to do with this is just right on that very edge that we've done it, we want to make it an ochre, like that. Same just there. Just gives a little bit of variation of colour, really. That's what we're looking for. Okay, that's excellent. Now, into here, we now use the ochre that we used previously, which is 182. And this is when I'm going to say to you, now what we need to do now is to work in the direction of the fur. Do you remember I mentioned that earlier? So what we want to do here is to make the fur here a little more interesting. So as a general colour, I'm not pressing really very hard at the moment, just a nice light pressure. But you see I'm changing, I'm going here like that, and when I come forward and up to the middle, I'm more or less straight. And as I work my way to the other side, you'll see me switch round to another angle. But you see, if you look at the cat now, we've got the makings of the fur. We've got a long way to go yet, but we've got the idea of the fur being shown, and we've got the light and the dark. So we've got two-tone effect. Now when we come over here, we'll be a bit more careful because we go up to the white, but we don't go over the white. So the white stays, because we put a nice strong colour in there, the white stays white. And here we then go up to the white with the .182. There we are. That's so far so good, isn't it? Now, if you've got one of these, or even if you haven't, you can use a paper blender, but these really are great. These are what we call colour shapers, and they really are stunning to work with. And what we're going to do with this is going to use it to blend out that sort of rather rough grey. When I finish this, you'll see how this is actually going to look when it's finished. And come in, use the colour shaper almost as though you've got another pencil in your hand, like that. Now look at the difference between the two ears now, okay? So let's do the same with this one. Okay, think of it as another pencil. And come back in. So what you're doing is making it much smoother now. You've got a much better and more acceptable tone. Alright? Now at the same time of doing that, you can also go over here. Wow, Colin, can you really? Yes, you can. Let me do the other side this time first, and then you can compare this with that. You see how much smoother it looks. It doesn't matter if you go over those darker areas. I'm not intentionally doing so because we're going to be using the dark colours in a minute on there. But it doesn't matter if you do. You see how effective this is. And this is a simple animal. We're not doing really major complicated work. There's plenty of other examples if you really feel like having a go at this medium to actually go into those and with much more intricate detail. Now I'm going to stop there for a minute because I want you to see the difference between that and that. See how much easier it is? As I say, you can use a paper blender and that will work, but it won't work as well, I've got to tell you, as this colour shaper will. This is a wonderful tool. If you have any problem getting hold of them, but would like to do this, I do have them in my art store, so you can always visit that and get yourself one. Now really what we've done now is reach the halfway mark there, but we now need some strength. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use another colour. Now these dark colours are made up of three colours. The first colour was the 182. Let's just recap for a minute there. The next colour I'm going to use is this one, which is a dark brown. Okay, and then the final colour I'm going to use is this one, which is a dark sepia. Now that won't be used just yet, but I'm going to use this one, which is a dark brown. Now on its own it would be quite strong, but because we're putting it over the top of the 182, it's not going to be that strong. Are you with me? Because the colour underneath the 182 has weakened it. Now let me just go over these. I'm really just going over the dark areas now. Now that is lovely, but what you could do if you really, really felt like you wanted to do something a bit more special, you make it a little bit more, with a bit more design. You see what I've done there? Look at that, and now look at these. You don't have to, you could do that, but really it's a nice idea just to put a little bit of interest, make it more interesting. And yes, we are going to use a colour shaper on this in a minute, which again makes quite a difference. Now you see how nice that is. Still working in the direction that we see the fur lying in. One more, go there, like that, that's great. Now let's just do these other areas there. We've done darken that, and our little kitten is beginning to take shape now, isn't she? Or he. So that's great. So far we've done all the basic work. Now what I did tell you, I was going to blend this. So what I'm going to do, the idea of this is to actually push the colour into the paper, and then it loses the texture of the paper, and it also leaves you with a much smoother look. You can see that on the screen. I'm actually using the corner of this. You can use the whole thing, but I'm using the corner because it gives me a little bit more control over where it's going. And I think you're really going to enjoy this build up. And so far I think you'll probably agree with me that this is quite simplistic, nothing really too complicated. As long as you're following me, and that's what I hope you do, you get the pencils and you get the line drawing and you have a crack at it, and you'll end up with that effect. Okay, now what we need to do now, we start with the ears. We need to deepen those ears, and this is where we have to work on the colour. We've already put pink in, but I'm going to use a grey now with a little bit more strength. This is the grey that we used before. Okay, look at the difference that makes. Once again we can come down and we can, do you remember I said before, we can filter through the grey into the white. But I'm going to take that just a little bit further now, because I'm going to, at the same time, also use a weaker pressure just to put some colour into the white. Now, you might think, gosh, that's too strong. But I'm going to show you in a minute that it actually isn't. Now we want to make that a little bit darker, and what we do there is we make it darker with a 175. Now remember, I'm going to put 175 on here eventually, but the reason that I don't want a brown in here as such, so I'm going to use the 175, which I used just now, which I showed you just now, to darken this just a little more, like that. Okay, good. Now what we need to do now is to put a bit more colour in it. So I've now chosen another colour, oops, wrong colour, another colour, which is 187, and this is an ochre, and I'm going to go in with that, making it just a little stronger inside there, like that, on top. And then use your colour shaper again, keep it clean, and I always use my fingers to get these clean. There's no need to wash them off. You can see how clean that comes up. And we want to use that. Now just a little more strength. You don't have to blend this, you could leave it like that, but really it's better to do so like that. Okay, now while we're using the 175, I'm going to use it on the outside of this. This is where I said I would do, to make that even stronger, like that. And we can put just a little bit in here, like that. Now what we also do, let me show you, is something magical now, folks. Right, now, you see I've got a nice sharp point. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the white. Look, see how I'm doing it? I brought you closer so that you can see this better. Just here we use the white. Like that. But more importantly, you use the white to just create a little bit of extra weight and interest on the ear. Like that. Doesn't that look gorgeous? I'd leave that as exactly as it is, but what you could do while I'm here and showing you is to use these ochres again. This is 183. Do you remember we used it before on the edge? Just to create that extra little bit of tone on there. And the 175 that we've got, I'm not going to worry about a background on this, so we'll just leave it, because that will come later. But we just make it a little darker so that the edge, and we just put those little, like that. Doesn't that look fabulous? Now while I'm going to show you, while I'm close up, I want to show you how we tackle this fur. And I'll do a little bit and then I'll actually complete the remaining area, because you don't want to keep seeing the same thing over again. Now what we do is we go back to our 182. This is the one we use as a base for here, and we on top of the ivory, but this time we want to make it just a little stronger in here. Now I'm going to show you the whole of this area so that you'll be able to see the difference it makes by using all the different colours we're going to be putting in here. Now as I said, I'm not going to use a background. If I were to put a background on here, I would actually keep these short. And then we would rub the background in, as you will see me do on other things, and then we can put the hairs over the background. But in this case, because this is a fairly simplistic picture, I'm not going to put a background on, so we can afford to be a little bit longer with our hairs here. Okay, now there are places where you want the light to be darker than the others, so let me just show you how we work that out. Here I want it quite dark, and I'm going to put a darker colour on, but in places I don't want it like that, so let me just do a little bit more so that you can see that it's a good idea just to a little bit here and a little bit there. Let me just go down this side for you as well, show you how that works. And that ear would be done the same as that one. This ear is the same as that ear. There's no need to me to do it again, because you've seen it done, so you'll be able to do that yourselves by following the instructions on the other ear. Okay, now that's enough for the moment. Okay, now we'll just deal with this area. I'm going to go in with a 177. This is the colour I used on here, but this time I'm also going to use it on top of the fur, which creates yet another tone. A few little hairs going up there like that. We don't want a lot of it in here, but we do want a little, because we do need to have some of the fur, not all the way through, just in places a little darker. So we've got different tones in there, and I think that looks so great, doesn't it? I'll just do this. Now we go back in with our 175. This is the darkest colour we're going to be using, and we go on top of that dark tone that we used. Now the reason I'm doing this is because I wanted the actual dark marking to be a very dark version of that. That's why I put that in first. And then the brown give me an intermediary, and now I've got the 175, which is a very dark colour that does the business. And we can make that just a little darker at the top there, just to make it even more interesting. Okay, now I'm going to leave it at that, although I want to come down here and do this. I can't really do this until I've finished the area that I showed you before. But what I really want to show you is this. Now you could leave it like this, okay, but let me show you what happens, the magic that happens if you use a colour shaper. Now you've got to be a bit careful, but you just go in with the corner, like I'm showing you, and just fluff it up. And I just do halfway, and you can look. Now even if you can't do this absolutely the same as me, have a crack at it, because the more you do, the better you'll get at it. Here we are now. Just see how how fluffy that looks. Like that. That looks like that. Okay, let me just go back, and now I'm going to complete this area down here, and you'll see it finished, but it's actually what I showed you there, so it's all the same. And then I'll complete the other ear, and then we can move on and we can do around the eyes next. That's the next bit we're going to do. I'm just putting the finishing touches now to the dark there before I bring down the ochre and the brown. There's the brown and there's the ochre. Right, now we bring this down again, as I said, mould it together with the white, and we get a nice interesting. Now even if you press really hard, you won't get that any stronger. So what you've got to do is to use the other colour. This is the 177 to make it dark. Now, it's not as dark here as it is up there, so we need it just put it, but not too dark. Just a little. Okay, that would be just about right. You can always go back and put more in afterwards, but I would take it now. This is over here would be the same. Just a little bit of extra weight, following the direction of the fur again that we see. That's fine. Now with our colour shaper, we've got to be more careful now, because we don't want this to be quite as dark. So just almost flick it so we get what we're looking for is a furry look, and I think we've got that, haven't we? Really nicely there. Now let's just do this again. What we're trying to do here is just to make the fur more lifelike by reducing the amount of paper that we can see through. It's still got a little bit, we won't be able to get rid of all of it. There we are, now that's nice. Now, having got that, you would have some residue on your colour shaper, and you can use that just to put just a little touch of tone in the white. Not too much, just enough. You see, that's nice, isn't it? Just enough to make it like an off-white. Now that looks really nice, doesn't it? Make it a little bit darker with the 175. There we are. And the other thing you can do, this is tricky. Now, be careful with this. You can, if you twist the pencil. See how I'm doing it? I'm twisting it like this, watch me. As I twist the pencil, I can then go up into some of these dark areas, but you have to twist it, otherwise you bring the colour back. Now if you're not sure about this, don't do it. It's only if you want to give it a go. And what you get more natural looking marking that way. Like that. Now that is stunning, isn't it? Isn't that nice? We've gone all round there with it. All I haven't done there is I haven't put the ochre in, which I did on the other side, so I'm going to do it now. It's between, really, the dark colour that we put in and the white. And it just serves as to make the cat, or the pussy, or the kitten, just that little bit more interesting. Now, you can also, when you get to this stage, go back over what you've done. Maybe you'd like to put a bit more pinking, like that. Maybe you'd like to put a bit more white in, you know, to make it a little crisper. You can go back over and do all of this now. Okay. This is fine on this side. Maybe you put a little bit of ochre. You can. It's your picture. You do what you feel like you're doing. And I'm looking at that and thinking, I put a little bit more ochre in there. And this is the other colour I put on this side, 187. Put a bit of that in as well. See how much more attractive that can be. You could even put it in the fur if you want to, just a bit. Almost anything goes, to be honest, folks. But once you get to that, you don't really want to spoil it. Now, there's a little bit of grey coming down here. Now, what I'm doing is I'm using the 273 grey, which we've used all the way along here. And I just started to do this because it just needs a little bit more. And the other thing it needs is just here and there. Now, this is risky and difficult, I know, but it does look stunning if you can pull it off. Just a bit of the dark colour in. This is 175. Okay, let's do it on the other side. See how much nicer that looks. Pick your spots. Doesn't that look stunning? Okay, now we're going to move down and we do the eyes. I always like to do the surround first, so I'm going to actually go around here with it. Now inside here, we've already put the white in here. If you haven't, do it now. Nice and solid there. But in here, now what I want there is the ivory. But cats, as I'm sure you know, have very short fur here, just here. And I've got a little V here. You'll see it on the reference picture. And what is a good idea is to remove a little bit more of that, because we don't want it to show. That's it. It should be all right now. But we want to know where our stopping point is. And it's going to be here. So you see what I'm doing? I'm using a sharp point and I'm twiddling it in very short. Where here I was going with long strokes, now I'm doing short strokes. Like that. Now we want the similar colours, but the only difference is I'm going to put this colour and the 182 in. Let's start with the 182. You will see as we go on through the sequence, especially in the eye, that the 182 and the 273 grey, when mixed together, produce a really nice colour. And it is actually the colour of the eye. It's sort of borders on green, but it's not. You know, it's got that nice, it's very unusual tone. Okay, nearly done. I'm spending time on this because I want you to see it. Now, the difference between this and the other is that we don't blend this. I want this to be as it is. I don't want to blend it because we don't want the. I want it to be short and sharp, and if we blend it, it's going to be a bit muddy. So isn't that nice? Look at that. Isn't that lovely? Okay, so that's all we do. Very simple, isn't it? Now, if you want to, we can complete the nose area. But what we're doing now is we're changing it slightly. We put a little bit more ivory in, but we're going to add a colour just to the bottom half of the nose until we get to about there, where the nose takes on a completely different colour. So we come on with our ivory. At the moment I'd keep that separation in so that you know where you are, because once we get the other colour in here you'll see what I'm talking about. Okay, it's more or less the same again, it's very short there. Now the different colour here is going to be 187. Okay, so it's a little sort of ready. Now you can go up to that area because we've now taken on a very slightly different tone. So we can see the difference. That comes right down to the bottom. Okay, and we can also put a little bit of white around here. You can't see too much of that side, but this side you can because the cat's facing slightly this way. Okay, good, that's great. Okay. Now, where's my other colour I was using? Grey, wasn't it? Here we are, a little bit of grey on top of that. And you see, by adding that 187 colour, we've got a very slight difference in tone, which again makes it much more interesting. That's lovely for the moment. What I want to do now is I want to make it a little darker on the side. So I'm just making it just a little stronger there. And you can see, and this a little stronger here, but not in the middle. And that gives us a roundness to the nose, and we can follow that by putting a little grey in, like that. Good. Great. So we've now got a little round nose as well, as a bonus. Now all around the eye, here we've got ivory, and you see there's also marking there. So we're going to put the marking in as well. Go down to this point now. This is as far as we're going to go, okay? Ivory there, ivory there. Oops, I've gone further than I thought I was going to. I don't want to go right down there, do I? And we're going to put in the marking, just as we did with these up here. We're going to put the marking in, and that stretches all the way down and finishes there. And there's another one. These will be very clearly marked on your line drawing, so you don't have to worry about knowing where they are. Just need to put them in. Down like that. Now on the other side we've got the marking goes around there. And around there. There we are. Now the same action as we did up here, following the line that we see the fur line in, coming down from there. Now we've done that, we can see the eye clearly. But I think what I would get you to do is to darken this marking off. We can finish all of this later on, but once you've got the dark marking, you see where you're going, you understand what you've got to do with the eye better, because you've got reference points and framework, which is the next thing we're going to be doing. The eye itself, folks. And the first thing I'm going to do there is put the light in the eye. Really important to do that. And the other thing we want to do is to put a little bit of shading around there, not over the top, but just around here. Lovely, lovely. Now what I'm also going to do is I'm going to use the grey. Now this is on its own, and I'm going to cut round that marking. Because what you want to do is establish as quick as you can the tones of the eye, and you can see by doing that you've achieved it. And now Pussy is looking at you. Now at the same time we do that, we also put it, and do this lightly, don't press as hard as I have done in the middle. In the middle is fine, but down this outside edge, we want this to be quite light. It goes all the way down to there. Again, follow the reference line drawing that you're given with it, because it'll be clear. He's a very wide-eyed pussy, isn't he? She. I can't make my mind up whether it's a boy or a girl. Doesn't really matter. There you go. Now look at that. Doesn't that look stunning? Now we've got to fill it in. And what I'm going to do here, first of all, I think, is I'm going to put just a little bit of the grey on top of the white, like that. Because although I want it to be lightish, I don't want it to be as bright as these other colours when we've done them. So it's a little bit of white and a little bit of grey on top. And then with your colour shaper, we then blend that colour in. So what we want is a sort of a whitish or a lightish grey. We could use a light grey here, but I didn't want to restrict the colours a little bit to make it easier for you. So we're putting a little bit of white and a little bit of grey in. So we've got a grey eye. And we're going to end up with a very pretty eye at the end of the day, although it doesn't perhaps look that way at the moment. Here we are now, we've got a nice tone. Okay. Now the next colour we're going to be using will be our 182. Now the 182, do you remember I said when the 182 and the 273 get together, we get a really nice tone. Well, watch this. I'll do one eye first and then I'll do another eye so you can see the difference it makes. But you see, I've still left a little bit of light here because that's where I want the light to be. Excellent. Now what I'm also going to do is use Ivory. Now the Ivory works out as a blender in this case, and it puts a little bit of tone in the eye, but it also blends it. See? Look at the difference between the two now. Back in with the grey, just a little more grey, because I want it to be a little deeper there. And just to make sure we've got that right, we just make the pupil that little bit stronger. Isn't that lovely? So we've got kind of, as I said, it's kind of greeny look to the eye. Okay, now, next thing to do is we need to darken. Now I'm going to use the brown, which is 177. Now I'm being a little bit careful because it's very important now that we get this accurate, so make sure your pencils have got a bit of a point on them like that, otherwise you might find a bit of a problem with it. It's good, and then it also drops into there. Great. Now inside I'm not going to worry about putting another colour in. I'm going straight in with the 175. And the reason I'm doing that is that I don't want to crush the paper inside because I'm putting quite a lot of pressure on it. There we are. Now look at that. Doesn't that look good? And at the same time we go around the outer edge of the eye on top of the brown we've just used, around like that. And why not go on there at the same time, because that gives us a real powerhouse. Isn't that lovely? Now, having done that, what we do now is to use the grey just on the edge so that we make it a little softer. You see, otherwise it's going to be a bit harsh. So you use the grey 273 just to build the edge up. You see how nice that is? I'm just going to make that just a little more white there as well. No harm in bringing back white. No harm if you want to put a little bit of grey. I'm looking at it now and thinking maybe I could do a little bit more grey on there, like that, making it look good. That's lovely. Now we've got to now think about the eye itself, so I'm going to put a little bit of ochre in the eye. Now this is yellow ochre, 183, just to make it a little more interesting. And then we darken it down, 273 on top. Remember this light on this side, I'm retaining that light on that side now. Isn't that looking stunning, folks? Good. Now finally, we put in the 175 and we darken off just along the top. This creates some shadow. And that can go into there and around there. And then 182. See, I used the ochre 183 in there, but I'm now using 182 just on the outer edge of there. It's the inside of the eye now, just to create the effect. In fact, you might as well carry on using it. I mean, replay this a few times because it really is necessary. Now that little light that I put in originally, I'm just going to bring that back. There we are. Now look at that. And while we've got the white in our hands, all we do is just go around that light that we had there originally to make it brighter. Now folks, now we've got to do the other one, so I'm going to show you exactly the same procedure for that, but isn't that great? Right, we've got to match that with the other eye now. Now this is 182. We've already got quite a lot of 273 in there, which is the two colours of the main colour. There's a little bit more light in this one than there is in the other eye. So what we'll do is we will put a rim on, and that will be able to tell us sort of the next move to make, because by darkening the eye. Okay, now this is, but as before, we don't put it in the centre because it would be too many colours, so we're using the 175 directly on top of the grey that we put in. Now this gives us the strength. We can also just double check too with one eye and the other. Yes, that looks good, looks okay. We can make small adjustments if we need to later on. Okay, now that's fine. Now I'm just going to put let's re-establish the light in the eye. Notice that the light here is further towards the rim than this one is. That's usual in an eye, so never worry about that being wrong. That is actually correct. Okay, now a little bit of white in there just to give us the lightness. As I say, this is a little lighter, this one, than the other one. Okay, that's great. And now we blend with the 103, the ivory. Now, why this is important is because it's slightly yellowish. We get that like slightly greeny, greyish look to the eye, which is really what we've got in here. It's interesting because you'll be able to see both eyes and how we construct the eye compared with the other one. Good. Now the other thing I'm going to do is just to use the 175 on the outside of the eye. That gives us the strength. And as before, I use the 175 to strengthen that very heavy marking on the other side of the eye up. Good. Okay, now 273, we've got to start thinking about darkening it now. So the 273 goes in, but like I've said before, we don't make it quite so dark as that one, just round this rim. Good. And the rim. Now I think what we'll do now, we'll etch the eye with this is all about adjustments really. I'm just making sure that we have enough of the ochre as well. No, that's all right. Okay. Now we need some ochre in the eye now. This is the ochre that we use here. We can use that. Yes, that's nice. Now we're going to darken it, and we use 175. Now it's dark at the top, but it actually grades out when it gets to about there. And we also want some little bit on the edge. There you go. That's coming on nicely. Adjust the pupil to match the other one. That's good. And I think what we'll do here, I'm going to use the 182 to blend with. And that's nice. Backtrack a little bit with the ivory, but this is the sort of finishing touches now. We're going to put in the eye and a little more of the 183, which is the ochre, put in there. Now you could do this several times to adjust it. I mean, you've got the reference picture there, so you're copying that all the time, and as long as you get as close to that as you can, then I'm going to be noticing that looks really nice now. A little bit of brown here as well, giving that extra touch. That's stunning. A little bit of light, and we can bring the light back in here. Now that looks good. What I'm going to now, you've got the two eyes in. You know, you see, I'll just put it round so you can see. We can make adjustments to it. Like we can put some more grey. It's not really until you get the eyes in that you can do all of this. Put some more grey in to make it a little more. The other thing that I've done is I've used the 182. Is I was going to say it's a little stronger. You can afford to do it now because you've got that, and it's like in this centre area. It was a bit tentative to start with, but now we can be just a little bolder with it. You see the difference it's making to that. 187 in here, didn't we? A slight change like that. I like that. And we can then use, this is the 177, the dark brown. So we can actually, now watch this, I'll just do one side and you can see how it comes up. To try to get the round look to this, if we make it darker, lighter in the middle, then you get a little bit darker here, a little bit stronger there. You see how that now looks round, and by putting just a little touch of pink here, I put a little bit in earlier just to test it, and put a little bit of pink in there as well. It just makes it a bit pretty, just a touch. And you put a bit of ochre, a bit of ivory in as well, just to make it. There you go. Look at that, isn't that stunning? Okay, now that's done. So we've now got to work on the next bit, which is the nose, which is a sweet little area. But once again, what we do with this is we start putting the light in first. So the first thing you do is that. Now, all this little pussy has got a very white, very, very light area here. Now those little markings there, we'll avoid them if you can because they're very dark. I'll do one side because it'll be exactly the same on the other side. Now when you get to here, you have the white and the ochre mixing together. So what you need to do there is to have the ivory, which we used as a base colour, if you remember, for this earlier, and you need to have the ivory and the white mingling then, and that's when you get this lovely tonal value between the two. Now the white is solid, but there's no reason why you can't put the ivory in there as well, and also a little bit of the 182, which we're putting in anyway here, and let that stroll over so you get a sort of a nice tone in the white. But basically it's white that is the key to this. Now in there, I think what we'll do, you know, is we won't put any of the 182 underneath. It'll be too many. Now that looks really strong, doesn't it? But that's what they are, that's what they're like, folks. And then what you do is you make it work by putting a little extra tone in like that. They're quite so obvious now, are they? And they can be, in fact, just a tiny bit darker. I use the 175, so it's 177 and 175 in there as well. The area underneath here is another line, but we actually do put the 182 in there with a little touch of like that. That's what we do. Okay, so all of this really needs to be done now. Now I'm just going to put a little bit of strength on this side, finishing this off. As I said, I'll do this half here, and then the other half will, I'll let you have a crack at that. But follow the reference picture that I've given you. Now just make sure that we've got that down here. And once again, here we've got the white coming in, just as we have down here. So we've got the white as well. And we might as well, while we're here, complete a bit more of that. And this is when this is the edge of the face. This area over here is going to be the body. We'll deal with that separately. We really do need that white in there. Okay, I'm not going to worry about under here just yet. We'll just worry about where we can, because it's the nose really before we can do that. Okay, now we can just be a little bold with this. Mix the ivory and the white together at that stage. That's it. And we just put some dark markings in there as well. Like that. And switch your pencils about. If you've ever seen me working on other projects, you'll see that I'm constantly switching my pencils around, as it gives you one pencil doesn't dominate. That looks good to me. Just a little bit of a link there, like that, and then we have that out. That's fine. Now, that is lovely. I'm going to do the same over here so we get the matching pair, but that's the larger area, so I've done the largest area. And once we've done that, we can put that little sweet nose in there. Now for the nose. A little bit of white on the nose, not too much. And a little bit of white around here. Again, not too much, just a touch. You'll see why in a moment or two. And the other thing we do is a little bit of white here and a little here. And let me just go over it again, because this is actually quite important. It doesn't look it, but it will do, as you see, as it progresses. A little bit of white there, still leaving paper showing through, and going up almost to the line that we have there. Don't need to rub this line out, because that's going to disappear in a minute with the dark colours. A little bit of pastel here, white pastel there, and a little bit there. Just a little bit. So you'll see now why I say that. I'm going to use the grey now. This is a 273 grey. There's not many colours that we're going to use here, and we're going to produce a fantastic nose with a minimum amount of colour. And round there. And this is the very, very best way to do this nose. And it's really simple. It might, if you looked at it after, or when you look at it after, you'll think, gosh, that is quite complicated, but it actually isn't, because we're taking our time. Now there we are, there's the shape of the nose. I've actually gone over the line, that's all I've done. This is where we start here by using the pencil. Notice this little round circular movement I'm doing. What we want to do is put a little bit of light on the nose, and we'll actually be putting a bit of light back in there again at a later date. Okay, now just for the moment we'll put that to one side, and I'm going to get the other pencil, which is the 182, and then just fashion that a little bit. I'm not going to go all over the nose, I'm just going into that bit there. So we have a white, little white area there, and we have the 182 moulding it. Got it? Okay, now the rest of this here is quite strong, so we put a fairly strong colour, dig it in, make sure it's solid. Now before we move on, what I'm going to do now is use the 175 to put that depth on top of it. Okay. Now we're fairly safe now, because we can fill the nose in a little stronger, because we haven't got white underneath this section. You see, it's going to be a little darker than that. Same there, going to be darker. However, when we go over this white, you see how much lighter it is, just as it was there. Now, just in here, because that had white under it as well, it's a little bit lighter. Can you see where I'm coming from? And because we put that dark in there, we can see it clearly. Okay, now we're nearly there, folks. Now we just use the pencil, this is the 175, and we use a pencil the same way we did with the grey. And we want to make sure that's nice and strong. That's always got to be strong, that, because that denotes the nostril. And the same there. And bring that down, like that. And once again. Now what we do now is go over it again with 175. once again, because we've got that light underneath there that we put in there originally, see the difference? At this stage, we've just got to blend it now. Now use the corner, very tip. Don't use the flat because it's too. It'll be too concentrated. So we just want to just fashion that just a little bit. Oh, isn't that lovely? We can also just make that a little more. Great. Now all we've got to do now is darken it down. There we go. Back over with 175 and just bring in the very darkest parts of that nose. Just leaving the suggestion of light there and there. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a little bit of 182 just to make that a little bit more acceptable. You see how that works? There, like that. And we just put just a little touch of white. And that little bit, I said I was going to put some more white on there. Well, there we are, a little bit of white on there. And that is lovely. Just a final touch, you can just dig in the 175 just to make it just a little stronger there. But that is a sweet little nose. Excellent. Now, let's move on. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the white. I'll do my usual trick of 1/2 because it takes too long otherwise. Now we're going to put some white in here. This is the chin. And go all over, and that'll go all the way around to there. And then on top of that, we use the 273, and that can come from the mouth. So you put just work in the direction of the fur and also above it. Not so much work the direction of the fur here because it's too tight, but that's what we're looking for. Okay. Now you don't really want to smile. It looks as though she's smiling or he's smiling. We don't want that. So we want to bring it down so that what we get left with is that. Got it? We could also put a bit of pink in. This would apply to the other side as well. A little bit of pink. And a little bit of pink in the mouth. I'll finish the mouth off when I finish that side over there. But this can also be put into there. And then once you've done that, you can also put just a touch of 182 in as well. Now when I finish this and you come back to me, I'll show you how we actually finish that off because we need a sharper white just to put the finishing touches to that. But let me finish that off and then we can then finish off there and then start the fur, which is really interesting, this bit. And of course we're nearly finished now. All I've done is just make that just a little stronger. Like that. As I said before, we don't want to be don't go too far because it looks as though you've got a smile on his face. And while that might sound a very good idea, it's not really true. Now a little bit of pink in the middle of that, and we've got a sweet little nose there. On either side of that dark, you put just a little bit of 182. You've seen me do this before. It just stops it from being too harsh. Here we are. And that is as far as we need to go. A little bit of white going down there. Sort of disguise that. And I think we're okay. We've got whiskers to put on this later on, which we'll do. Now, underneath here, this is when we can start to fashion the chin, but we've got to put some white on. So we start off by I'll do the whole lot here. This might look difficult, but it actually isn't that hard. Again, if you follow the rules. Now, he's a very attractive pussy, but he has got some markings which might be a bit tricky. Now, I put the white in here deliberately because what we're doing, we're going to come down and we're going to fashion. You notice that I've left some of the white paper, the sand colour paper, coming through here. And what we're going to do is just shape his little chin like that, and we can do it by putting the grey on. And that can be blended down into the white that we put on before. And then at the same time, we also want this other colour, which is the 182. So there's the 273 and the 182, and that goes in on top of that. Okay, now, next thing we do is we just blend that. The idea is to give a shadow under the chin, which is what we've done. Now, we also need to be a little darker with that, because it's not just a shadow, it's also a marking. So we put a little bit of, this is 177. Okay, and then on top of that, we put the 182 again. It might seem a cack-handed way of doing it, but you'll make sense of it as we go on. Great. Okay, now I'm going to turn it up the other way. So be prepared, having upside down. Okay, now what we're going to do now is we go from the chin downwards. The reason I do this is because I push it. I have to protect my picture with a piece of cartridge paper, but what we do is we go back in like this, and we go over, twist the pencil as you go. Well, watch those little spots there, and you'll see that what I'm doing is actually twisting this pencil around. And we'll be doing this quite a lot during this build-up, but when I turn that back the other way, you'll see how nice it is. Let's come back the other way. And ba-bam! See how nice that is? That's good. So now we've got that. That's great. We can make it a little bit, I won't do it now, but what we can do is to fashion it a little bit more by putting a little bit, well, I will do it now to show you. You can, normally you wouldn't do this, to be honest. That's until you have a little bit more done, but just to make sure you can see this working. Now that was 177 and 182. There we are. Lovely. That just gives you a little bit of extra strength there, and then we can come down again. I mean, I'd turn this other way, up the other way ordinarily, but I can't keep doing that. But you see, we got a rather nice feature area just there. Anyway, let me just carry on, because we've got a whole load more now. Now, this white will extend down to about there. It's not critical that it is absolutely spot on accurate. But then what we've got is a marking. So the marking goes in underneath here. Now it's not a line, so it's a broken line. So notice that what I'm doing is I'm a bit random with it. And here it goes up to almost a point. It says I've got a very brief Can you see that line underneath there? Well, it's a very light line, but it's indicating that this is what I've got to do with it. And it goes up all the way round, and it disappears when we get to there. So what we have here, we've got some more white, which I shall show you how we can put the shadow on that in the tick. There. And we can now go back in with the white here, making it just a little more solid. I say this is easy, and if you follow these rules, if you don't, you might get yourself into a bit of a stew. But it actually is quite easy. Now, having done that, from there we could go again. We've got another white. We might as well do all of this at the same time. Now, this is where the pussy finishes here. So now our finishing point will be there. I've left this gap again, and again you'll understand that as we proceed. Okay, a little bit more down here. Now, if you should be following, if you're doing this pussy, you should be following what I'm doing. So do exactly as you see me do here. Down to the bottom like that. Even there, leave that alone just for the time being. And I'll show you. It will all make sense, I promise. I know it doesn't look it at the moment, but it will do. Now this is going to be a mixture of colours in here. So I'm now going to put some ivory in. We haven't used ivory very much at all, but I'm going to put some in here, on there. Ivory is a colour which not only gives you a very creamy looking tone, but it also is a very, very good blender. So it works. It's almost like putting your colour shaper that we're using on, because it blends in these other colours. I think you can probably see that. Quite a lot to do, but I'm showing you all of it because it's tricky. As long as you follow the rules, it will work. Now that's fine. We still got gaps, but I'll show you what we do with that now. We now need to put the grey in between. We've already seen how I started that, but we go back the other way as well. That's why I've completed it. You can see already it's working, isn't it? And down here we've got a dark marking. It looks like it continues. And it follows on here too. We need to be a little more solid with this now, so we go back in again and make it a little more solid. Following the fur direction, you see what I was doing? Now the other thing we've got to do is to use we've had the white, we've had the ivory, and we've had the grey. Now we're going to have some of the 182. We already know from experience that the 182 works very well with ivory, it works with the grey, so it's going to be a nice safe colour to put on. Once again, look at the direction of the fur. Now, while I'm doing this, I can give you a little bit of information. This is one of the easier pictures we do, and I've deliberately chosen it and limited the amount of pencils that we use. But there are some really, really nice, more advanced work and more spectacular work on our the site and YouTube and so on, you'll be able to see. But this is fairly simple. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to twist it round because it's easier for me. I'm going to use the colour shaper and watch how this all changes. What we do half of it. Now remember that what we can do here is we can put the light back on, we can put the white back in to it. And you treat the colour shaper a bit like you would if it was a pencil. And when we get to the halfway point, I'll stop and you can just have a look at the effect that we've created. Notice that I'm not doing this when I put the dark colours on. I have done there, but I wanted to show you, but basically it's better really to do it with the light, the medium tones. Now look at the difference between those two, folks. You wouldn't believe they were the same, would you? And you can see now, I think, how this picture is, or this little puss is going to look in the end when we put the dark colours on and we just put the finishing touches to it, which isn't very far away. I really need to turn this round. Let's speed it up for you. Put it on fast forward. There we are, good. Now, we've got a section over here to worry about now. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the ivory in there as opposed to the white, because I want that to be just a touch darker. If I put white, we would lose it. And then we're going to put the grey. Because this is his back, or her back. And then we use 182. Now that's going to be just that little bit darker there than this area. So we just do this as well, exactly the same way, only the fur comes that way. Now we're looking at the fur falling away from that. There we are. Now it's a good idea really when you get to there to actually finish this section off, because then we can bring the white over the top of this. So what I'm doing now is just going with in the fur direction as before with the 273 grey. And you see I'm not making it a straight line coming down now, and that's deliberately. And then we use the so 182 and just a touch of the 177. You don't want too much of this. Maybe just a little bit there would be nice to indicate that because we're not putting a background on that. It's nice. Just a little bit here and there to indicate the back. And as you can see, that works really, really well. I don't think we need to do any more than that. And we can just very, very lightly make that more furry. Excellent. So now we've got the back. Now this has all got to now tie up with that. So we're going to use the, I think we'll have a grey here, first of all. I'm going to put several colours in here, but now you notice that I'm being a little bit more positive with it. And I'm also holding it differently. I'm holding so that I've got this as close to the paper as I can, like that. If that was the paper like that, you can see I'm very, very close to it. You see the shadow? Like that. The reason I do that is because, one, it doesn't crush the paper too much by doing this, and you get a better general effect. Now here we've got to look at this being matching that, but not quite as dark. I know that seems tricky, but we've already put that in there, so we've got something to work with. And here we've got that finishing down over there. Okay, and now we've got the dark. This is the 177. I'm being a bit more careful with this because it's not as compatible with the whites and the ivories as it is with those mid-tone colours. But we have to put it in. We haven't got no choice but to put it in because that's the colour we've been using all along. And we might as well finish it off. A little bit more here. You notice that I'm going over the top of the grey there. And although I can't avoid touching the ivory and the white tones, it's basically the grey that I'm going over. And now with our darker colour, which is 175, that goes in and darkens it down still further. Like that. Now we now need to come back in with the other colours again before we actually put the white on, just to make it work. And watch how I do this. I can bring some of the colour, drag some of the colour that I've already got in there into it. And again, I'll stop halfway and show you how this works. Look, see? It's almost like putting your blender on it, but we're not. We're using the pencils to do the job for us. So although I'm cack-handed, you're actually seeing this more or less straight on, so it's easier for you to understand what I'm getting at. And this is where we have the marrying of those two, but we're still going to be able to see the difference between them. In other words, that does look as though it's the front of the animal, and that looks as though it's the back of the animal. No, isn't that spectacular though? Lovely. Now we've got that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it upside down again. Now you've seen this done before, you saw it done here, so you're going to see it done again. I've got a nice sharp white here, so we then go with the white, we put that on. Same action as before, keeping it close to the paper, but this time we're kind of finishing, and we can put a few little white hairs. As I say, if we put a background, we wouldn't be able to do that, but we're not putting a background on this, so we can actually get away with it. There we go. All the way, let me just work this through, work this round. I'll just speed it up now because I think you've got enough information now. Remember, this is our body, and this is our front, and this is the back. which we've got to have a distinct difference between those two areas. Lovely. Okay, let's have a look at the other way. Now, isn't that spectacular, folks? Isn't that lovely? Now, we can add a little bit more if you want, and I'm looking at it now thinking, well, we've got a lot of ochre in there, so let's put some more ochre in to make it look a little bit more ochre-y. This time we don't need to worry about any blending, because basically we've already done it with our colours, so we can just leave it like that, but make it as ochre as you want. I'm not going to do any more. I think that's absolutely stunning. Now this is lovely. It's just got just a little bit. I tell you what I'll do. I'll make that just a little bit with my grey. I think it's a little bit more obvious. The chin, the chin's there. Lovely, very pretty. Now, if you would, we want to put whiskers on here. We have a little difficulty because with pastel, unfortunately, you tend to, because you've got lots of white on and you can put another white on, like, let me show you what I mean. See, I mean, that's not too bad, is it? Oh, well, that's not bad at all. So you have to zip them in like this. Okay, let me show you that again on the other side. The only problem with this side is we're going on white, so you may not see it. See, you know what I mean? So what we do a little trick. What we do is we use a dark colour as well, okay? And you'll see that go on, all right? And let's put a few on the other side as well, just to marry them up. This is 175. There we are. Well, there we are, folks. It's a great little project. I hope you have a go at it. We've got lots and lots and lots of others for you to try. If you do enjoy the medium, I'll see you next time. Bye for now.